Welcome back everybody. Today I want to look at mental health stigma, what it means, what we can do about it, when it started, where it all comes from, and actually how can we break it down so that we make our society a better place to live in and we're compassionate to people with mental health illnesses. The word stigma means a disgrace with a person, circumstance, or a particular quality, and that is actually quite disgusting that we think of people with mental health illnesses as a mark of disgrace. So let's break this down. Let's look at some examples of mental health stigma. So stereotyping, and you know, a lot of society doesn't understand or thinks that people with mental health illness are dangerous, unpredictable, they're incapable of leading a normal life, and that's just not true. There's discrimination, so employment, housing, social relationships, based purely on somebody's diagnosis that they've got poor mental health. And actually it doesn't mean that they can't do particular jobs or they shouldn't live in particular communities. Another example of mental health stigma is blaming, so believing that the mental health condition is their fault somehow and that they can help it and they just need to pull themselves together and pull their socks up. And actually if you've suffered with a mental health illness, you know that's just not true, and it's not possible for you to do that. Or we can minimise or dismiss the experiences that someone's going through. We can not allow them to share or to explain what's happening to them. We think somehow that there's a moral failing, that they just don't have the willpower to get better. We can exclude them socially, so isolating, avoiding them, avoiding communicating with them due to fear and misunderstanding. There's also a self-stigma that you can bring about yourself. So that's internalising a negative attitude, and by doing that you're hiding it, so you're less likely to reach out for help, or you feel ashamed or embarrassed, and we shouldn't feel like this. It's no different to having a physical condition, except if somebody breaks their leg you can see it. With mental health you can't. And so people have this preconceived idea that it's all made up or it's all in their head, and that just isn't the case, and it's actually really damaging. There's a lack of access to resources. There's limited funding on the national health for people with mental health issues. You hear of waiting lists, of ridiculous amount of times of waiting lists when people are at the end of their at the end of themselves. So this leads to barriers in accessing the appropriate treatment. Obviously you can go privately if you have the funds, but not everybody does. So these are some of the examples that highlight the negative attitude and beliefs and stigmas around mental health. So when did mental health become stigmatized? And for centuries it goes right back that the mentally ill patients would be locked up, tortured, kept in cellars, isolated from society, and stigmatization reached its peak during World War I, where hundreds of thousands of mentally ill patients were tortured. They're either killed or sterilized. And we need to talk openly about mental health. Social media has become a great space in some respects for positivity, but just educate yourself and others, and try and negate those negative comments. If you hear somebody being negative, then try to talk to them about the actual facts, and try and break that down. There's several factors that contribute to mental health stigma, and we've covered the stereotypes of the dangerousness and unpredictability, knowledge about mental health and substance use disorders. Many people have limited knowledge about mental health. They also they fear it, they have some discomfort around it. They think that people are unpredictable, and none of this is true. And so we have this fear that leads to stigmatization. There's cultural and societal beliefs that somehow it's all your fault, and it's a weakness in some places if you have mental health issues. and this all helps contribute to the mental health stigma. There's the media portrayal as well. The media often portrays poor mental health conditions as negative. They sensationalize it. It just reinforces the stereotypes and misconceptions, and that further contributes to the stigma. And then there's the discrimination and marginalisation that people face in various aspects of life, as I've mentioned: employment, housing, social conditions and relationships, and this just reinforces that stigma. And then there's the self-stigma as well, negative attitudes, and that all prevents individuals from reaching out for the right support. So we can break these mental health stigmas, and we can do this by talking openly about it. We can encourage equality between physical health and mental health. As I touched on before, when you can see a physical health condition, people are far more compassionate and believe it more than when it's mental. And we can show compassion for those with mentally ill. If you've never been through a mental illness before, it doesn't mean you can't try and understand what somebody's going through. So we can do this through education and promote and research accurate evidence-based information and make sure that we're fully aware of how somebody might feel. We can have open and honest conversations, and sometimes it's just a case of sitting down with someone and listening to what they've got to say. They just want to be heard. They don't always want someone just to fix it. Language matters. Be respectful, use the right words, and words matter. Avoid derogatory terms. We can challenge stereotypes with the right evidence-backed information. Speak up when you hear or see someone being spoke to in a derogatory manner, or you know that the facts aren't true. And show support and empathy towards individuals. Encourage them to speak to someone or get professional help if they need to. And we can advocate for change. We can advocate for the right policies and practices to be put in place so that there isn't this stigma where people don't understand, especially in the workplace, in society, in communities. And we can lead by example. So share your own experience. If you have mental health issues, speak up. Don't be afraid to share it. It may be cathartic to share those experiences you've had, and it will help somebody else. If we look at the least stigmatized mental illness, that society tends to accept depression, general anxiety disorder and OCD more than it does bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. They tend to be the most stigmatized illnesses, mental illnesses. One of the most overlooked mental health illnesses is antisocial personality disorder, and as the psychiatrist Donald Black MD said, it is psychiatry's forgotten disorder. So if we look at the 4 mental health stigmas now, we've got stigma stems from an internal kind of stigma. It can include public stigma, professional stigma, and also institutional stigma. Mental health illnesses and stigma, substance use disorders are very misunderstood and generally can come hand in hand as well. And people believe that mental health and addiction is all that person's fault. It's, you know, it's a moral failing and that they can do something about it. And quite often with addiction comes mental health challenges too. In fact, the mental health challenges sometimes come first, which leads to the addiction, because addiction is just masking the trauma. So if we're going to help those with substance use disorders, then we need to fix the problem first. Otherwise, taking the substance away and you're still left with all the trauma, and so you're likely to reuse. And if we look at mental health stigma increasing, yes, it is in some places, unbelievably. We've done a lot, we've moved forward a lot as a society, but it is actually increasing as well. And especially those living with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So I've created another video which I'm going to put in the comments around the 7 things you can do to reduce mental health stigma. I'll put that in there, and I'll also put the link to a previous video I did on where in the UK you can get mental health resources. If you're watching from another country and you can put up your own mental health resource helplines, websites, please do. If you've watched and seen mental health stigma around you, or you've felt part of that, then please let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear what you've got to say about it. This channel is for you, and it's for everybody watching. So if you've got a subject that you'd like me to cover, then please let me know, because I want to cover and talk about the things that interest you. Finally, I'd like to say to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and you'll find out when I'm bringing out more content. Thank you for listening today, and have a great day.